Excited to be here today? Make some noise. How many of you have been to a TEDx event before? Please raise your hand. I see a few hands. Please put your hand down. How many of you have been to CUHK campus before? Please raise your hands. Keep that hand raised. If you had raised your right hand, please put your hand down. If you had raised your left hand, high five. You're part of my small world. Worldwide, around 10 to 12% of the population are left-hander. Do you know that I and the other left-handers face a lot of difficulties with day-to-day objects? Let it be a milk pot with the spout on the left side, oops, or a can opener which only turns one way, or some scissors which cut better when you're using your right hand. Being a lefty in a righty world isn't a problem only for me. When a social media channel created a video uploading tool in 2007, about 5 to 10% of the videos were uploaded upside down. The designers were baffled. Why are users using the device incorrectly? Well, you know, the early design was the problem. They had developed an app primarily based on a right-hander developer team. I, as a left-hander, know that I turn my phone 180 degrees before I shoot videos. So without realizing, they had created an app which was suitable only for right-handed users. The left-handers were left out of the system. This is just one example of how unconscious biases influence our actions every day, even though by definition, we don't know it. Combating these biases is hard. After all, we've relied on them for survival from caveman days. And they don't feel wrong, they feel right. But now the stakes are high. If we have to solve some of the world's pressing problems, we need to get outside the confines of unconscious bias. We need to make the unconscious conscious. It was during my journey from the wheel to the kiln, doing pottery, getting my hands in clay, that I really understood what this meant, and that shaped my thinking. I always wanted to do pottery since my school days. And where better than Hong Kong, close to the ceramic capital of Jingdezhen in Jiangxi. I am a left-hander. I vividly remember the nervous anticipation with which I went into the pottery workshop in 2008 to learn the wheel work. My shifu had just shown me how to use the wheel, and then I asked her, "You've shown me the wheel from a right-hander's perspective. What adjustments do I need to make as a left-hander?" I really recall every word of what she told me, even to date. "You've never worked on the wheel before, so how does it matter? Do it the way a right-hander would do." That gave me a moment of pause to unpack what I had carried and learn without bias. I had fallen into that same preconceived notion that something was not for left-handers. Before I started learning to do pottery, my exposure was only to mass-made, factory-produced pots, like the ones that you see in the shop. And I had no sense of what a handmade pottery would look like. I had no sense of the aesthetics, the fingerprints that we leave on the work, which enhances its uniqueness. And then when I had to glaze or color the bisfired pottery, I would glaze the entire pot, covering all the fingerprints and also covering all my mistakes. It's only when I started seeing the beauty in the rawness of the clay that I learned to leave some of the parts uncovered, showing the clay instead of hiding it. Which brings me to the next point. Wabi-sabi. It's a beautiful word in Japanese, which means the view or thought of finding beauty in the imperfections in nature. Now, you may ask me, why do we need to have this attitude? You see, if we develop one way of doing something or seeing one side of things as right, left, right, male, female, ethnic majority, ethnic minority, we blind ourselves to the other possibilities, and we also tend to believe that one is perfect. One hand, one gender, one ethnicity. And then we deprive ourselves of the vastness of the world, the diversity that it offers, something that only humans can perceive. Bob Dylan, the famous singer and composer, said this eloquently: "We contain multitudes." This affects us not just at a personal level, but also at an organizational level. Jessica Hyde was a script supervisor at Pixar, and she found great discrepancies between the male and female speaking lines and characters in the Pixar movies. So she decided to investigate and look for data across all Pixar animated movies. And what she found was stark. In the movie Toy Story, there was just one mother character, one sister character, and Bo Peep. Some of you might have seen the movie Cars. If you look at the percentage of male speaking lines in that movie, it was not 60%, it was not 70%, but it was a whooping 90%. Now, why is this even important? So what if there were 90% male speaking lines? We live in a world full of imagination. We see ourselves in the characters that we see on the screen. So when we look at Lightning McQueen, which is the main character in the movie Cars, we can imagine male car drivers based on the voiceovers. So as a result, we can imagine talking cars, but we can't imagine female NASCAR racers or car racers of different ethnicities. And if we can't experience this vibrancy, we are missing out on something that's essentially part of our life. Jessica's work at Pixar really helped increase the diversity of the characters which were shown on the screen. So if you look at the later movies like Coco or Toy Story 4, they told stories which were more like the real world, the kind of stories that we see here today. When we go beyond this and we look at what happens in our lives, in Hong Kong, I work with Empower on Amber Foundation, part of Amber Foundation, which is an NGO which works with ethnic minority university women. Sometimes we feel that we need to increase the urgency for conversations with hiring organizations so that they can look at inclusion of ethnic minority women in the workplace. This may not be a big priority to them, but it makes a big difference to the individuals, to the organizations, and to the community as a whole. So we need to really look at inclusion and move beyond unconscious bias for this particular group as well. Have a look at this picture. What are some of the things that you see? Regular kitchen items, right? When we do pottery, we scavenge the kitchen. We loot and collect things. It could be a spatula, it could be a fork, it could be a spoon, it could be a thermocol cover covering the fruit, it could be a watermelon baller. We use all of these things to trim the pot and make patterns on the raw pottery. So things which are useful in one way, but can be used for a totally different purpose if we are willing to see this. So like that, in our walk of life, everyday walk of life, there are things that we use for one particular purpose. How can we go beyond that and look at something which is bringing from the outside in? And if we are able to do that, sometimes it could be the difference between life and death. Great Ormond Street Hospital in London is a children's hospital which treats more than 100,000 children a day. And they are covering kids who are having severe heart diseases. In the 90s, that hospital was having a big problem. The mortality rate was very high. In the 15-minute process of transferring the children from the operating table to the ICU bed, mistakes occurred. The process involved moving the kid from the operating table to a transport bed and then to the ICU bed, having to connect and disconnect numerous wires and also move life-saving equipment. They had tried everything, but they were making mistakes. So what was the hospital not seeing? What tools from outside could the hospital bring in to support the children? During a break, Doctors Martin Elliott and Alan Goldman watched the Formula One race. They found that there were striking similarities between the pit stop of the Formula One cars and the hospital handover procedures. Now, while the hospital handover procedures need not be rushed, the pit stop was really fast and efficient. So a lollipop man would usher the car to a halt. Somebody would quickly change the tires. Somebody would clean the vents, air vents. Somebody would replace the damaged parts. And within a staggering 4 to 7 seconds, the car was ready to go back on track. So what did the doctors do? They contacted Ferrari. They visited the headquarters and they made notes on what they could do differently and implemented those changes back in the hospital. So some of the things that they did was the doctors and the nurses would work on separate lanes. There would be no conversation during this complicated process. And there was a lollipop person who would manage the flow of this. Doing all these changes caused a 66% reduction in errors in the hospital, and obviously so much better outcomes for the pediatric patients. So how can we look at cross-industry learning and application? How can we bring all this in? If a hospital in London can learn from Ferrari in Italy, there is no limit. Given the times that we are in, we need to be conscious about the unconscious. We need to also ensure that we are certain about what we are doing. We need to find out how we can thrive in this world. You are here at the university trying to find your place and purpose in the world. You're the ones who are going to be solving the biggest problems, be it climate change, divisiveness, polarization. You're the ones who are going to make it happen. What can you do to be better problem solvers? Remember my pottery experiences? I leave you with 3 thoughts. Think like an artist. Explore, experiment, cross-connect, and be optimistic. Unlearn to relearn. Remember from the thinking that something had to be done by the left-handers differently to learning that there are no sides. What are some of the things that you're stuck with that you need to unlearn? The second thing, embrace the imperfections. All pottery pieces are unique, handmade, and they are beautiful. We embrace and celebrate them for what they are. What are some of the perfections that you're chasing without realizing the beauty and the fluidity of the so-called imperfections? And the third, learn from the outside to make things better on the inside. We can't solve everything on our own. We won't be able to do that. We won't be able to see the unseen on our own. Don't try to do that on your own. Phone a friend. Ask a mentor. Invite people with different perspectives into your life. Bring the outside in. I urge you to be optimistic, go beyond the obvious, and take action against unconscious bias. This will help us all see the unseen. Thank you.